right, let's jump into another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we're going to tackle the world of Premiership Rugby,
Okay.
specifically their finances. And, you're trying to get a grip on the state of all these English rugby clubs, especially after those government loans during the pandemic.
Right.
So we're looking at this Rugby Pass article.
Okay.
It's called Government Warn Premiership Clubs Are Teetering on the Edge. It's a pretty dramatic title, don't you think?
It is.
We've got some pretty fascinating details here about which clubs got those loans, how much money might be gone,
Yeah.
and what this means for the whole future of these clubs.
Right. Yeah.
So,
I mean, that headline, it really does
Okay.
grab you, doesn't it?
guys.
To kind of understand why the government's so worried, we have to think back to the pandemic.
Yeah,
These Premiership Rugby clubs were hit hard, just like all kinds of businesses.
right?
And they got this lifeline from the Department of Digital, Culture, Media, and Sport. It was a lot of money, $123.8 million in loans.
Wow,
Yeah.
that is a lot of money.
It's significant.
Yeah, I guess the hope was that this was just going to be temporary
Right.
to get them through. But the article keeps using this phrase, teetering on the edge.
Yeah.
So does that mean the loans weren't enough?
Well, unfortunately not.
Mm.
I think the pandemic really exposed some of those cracks that were already there in Premiership Rugby.
Yeah.
And 3 clubs, London Irish, Worcester, and Wasps,
Right.
they couldn't recover. They ended up going insolvent.
Wow.
They weren't able to repay those loans.
So what happened to them? And how much should we talk about here?
Well, London Irish, Worcester, and Wasps altogether got $41.6 million.
Okay.
If you think about it, that's over a quarter of the total amount given out to all the Premiership Rugby clubs.
Right?
Sadly, both Worcester and Wasps had to go into administration,
Yeah.
and they just stopped operations.
Mm.
Worcester has since been, brought back by a new owner, but Wasps is still dissolved, and London Irish, unfortunately, they've also stopped operations.
That's a real blow.
Yeah.
Not just financially, but for all those fans, the community around these clubs.
Yeah.
It makes you realize that behind all these numbers, there are real people,
Yeah.
real fans who really care about their team.
Right.
The article mentions that some other clubs might be in trouble too.
Yeah.
What's going on there?
Well, the article mentions a National Audit Office report,
Okay.
and it doesn't look good, It seems like the DCMS is really keeping an eye on all the remaining clubs.
Right.
They're looking for any signs that they're falling behind on payments, or if they're showing, signs of financial distress.
So it's not just those 3 clubs.
Yeah.
There's this worry that others might be
Right.
going down the same path.
And exactly.
Yeah, essentially the government's worried they're throwing good money after bad.
Right.
It's not just the $41.6 million that's gone already.
Yeah.
The government's also going to lose another £11 million in unpaid interest on top of that original
Wow.
£29 million.
So altogether.
Yeah.
Potentially almost £40 million.
So there has to be some hope here, right?
Yeah.
What's being done to stop more clubs from going under?
Well, the DCMS isn't just sitting around.
Oh?
They've brought in independent advisors to work with the Rugby Football Union and Premiership Rugby.
Right.
They're trying to, stabilize the finances, make the club sustainable for the long term. And there is actually a little bit of good news.
Yeah.
Most of the clubs that are still doing okay, they've actually started repaying their loans.
Oh, okay.
97% of scheduled payments have been made.
Wow.
By far.
That sounds encouraging. Does that mean they're in the clear?
Well, it's a step in the right direction,
Okay.
but the real test is going to be in 2025.
Okay.
When all the clubs are supposed to start repaying.
Right.
And even the NAO report, despite these initial repayments, predicts that up to 14% of the clubs that got loans could still fail within the next 10 years.
Yeah.
To really understand why this prediction is so dire,
Yeah.
we have to look a bit deeper into the financial structure of Premiership Rugby.
Okay.
We have to go beyond just the pandemic.
Okay, now that's what I call a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
We'll dig into those deeper issues and the potential problems
Right.
and what the future holds for these clubs in part 2.
Exactly.
So don't go anywhere.
You see, Premiership Rugby clubs have kind of operated on this feast or famine model for a long time.
Right.
They've relied on just a few key revenue streams.
Okay.
Ticket sales,
Yeah.
broadcasting deals, and sponsorships.
Okay, that makes sense. Those are the basics for most pro sports leagues.
Yeah.
So how did relying on those lead to this financial fragility we're talking about?
Well, each of those streams has become less reliable lately. Even before the pandemic, attendance at matches had been
Really?
pretty flat.
Why is that? Are fans just not that into rugby anymore?
I think it's a bit more complex than that.
Okay.
You know, the cost of going to a match has gone up. You've got all this competition for entertainment. People have more options,
Right.
streaming services, other sports.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, not every match is a nail-biter.
Right.
Some games are just more exciting to watch than others.
Yeah.
And that affects how many people actually show up.
So if they can't rely on ticket sales as much, what about those broadcasting deals? Those must bring in a lot of money.
Yeah, broadcasting rights are huge for Premiership Rugby,
Right.
but they're not as secure as they used to be.
Oh, really?
The whole broadcasting landscape is changing so fast.
Right.
You've got streaming services, new digital platforms. It makes it much tougher for leagues like Premiership Rugby to negotiate those big deals. It's just a much more competitive market now.
So we've got ticket sales down, broadcasting is tougher.
Yeah.
What about sponsorships?
Right.
Can't they still get big sponsors?
Well, sponsorship's still important, of course.
Yeah.
But it's also way more competitive than it used to be.
Okay.
Companies are really careful about where they spend their money.
Makes sense.
And they want results.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just stick a logo on a jersey.
Right.
Clubs need to be creative. They need to offer sponsors something valuable.
Okay, so it sounds like Premiership Rugby clubs are kind of facing a perfect storm with their finances.
Yeah, you could say that.
Revenue's harder to get, more competition, and it feels like they're not really adapting.
Well, that's what the NAO report kind of hints at. It suggests that some clubs haven't been as financially careful as they could have been.
Okay.
There's been this tendency to overspend, particularly on player salaries.
Yeah.
Not as much budget discipline.
Right.
And maybe, most importantly, they haven't been very innovative in finding new ways to make money.
So it's not just external factors like the pandemic or changes in broadcasting.
Right.
It's almost like there's been some internal, I don't know, mismanagement.
You could say that.
And this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
This whole financial mess raises some big questions about how Premiership Rugby is run.
Absolutely.
How much control should each club have over its own money?
Right.
Should there be stricter rules to prevent overspending?
Good question.
To make the league more stable?
Yeah, that's
in the long run.
That's a difficult balance.
It is, because you want clubs to be responsible.
Right.
But you also don't want to stifle their ability to compete and innovate.
Exactly. You want them to be able to grow and come up with new ideas.
What other fundamental questions are people asking?
Well, another big one is the current structure with so many clubs in the top flight, is it even sustainable? Some people think that a smaller, more elite league would actually be better for everyone financially.
Okay.
Fewer teams.
Right.
More concentrated talent.
Makes sense.
Easier to get those big broadcasting deals.
Yeah.
And maybe fewer clubs going bankrupt.
So the thinking is, even if it means fewer clubs, a smaller, more competitive league might actually be more stable.
Exactly.
For everyone.
It's controversial, though.
I bet.
Some people are very passionate about keeping all the clubs.
Yeah, they might say it would hurt the development of rugby in England.
Exactly.
Fewer opportunities for players.
Right. Less competition overall.
But the question is, can the current structure survive all this financial pressure?
Right.
Or does something have to change?
That's what everyone's wondering.
Yeah, it's a question that a lot of rugby fans are asking right now.
I think so.
It's not just about this immediate crisis.
No.
It's about the long-term health of the sport they love.
Right, exactly.
We've talked about why this is happening.
Yeah.
The pressures from outside, the weaknesses inside the clubs.
Right.
But what happens next? What are the possible ways forward? How do these clubs not just survive,
good question,
but thrive in the long run?
That's the million-dollar question, and that's what we'll explore in the last part of this deep dive.
All right, we're back for the final part of our Premiership Rugby deep dive.
Okay.
We've gone over the challenges, we've looked at the background.
Right.
Now let's talk solutions.
Right.
What needs to happen to get these clubs back on track and set them up for a better future?
Well, there's no quick fix, of course.
Right.
But there are a few key areas where the clubs and the league itself can really focus their energy.
Okay.
Think of it as a three-pronged approach. Financial prudence, fan engagement, and a good bit of innovation.
I like it, a three-pronged attack plan.
Exactly.
Let's break it down. So financial prudence.
Yeah.
That seems pretty obvious. What does that actually look like?
It means moving away from that boom and bust cycle.
Right.
That's been a problem for Premiership Rugby for so long.
Yeah.
Clubs really need to get serious about their spending,
Oh.
especially player salaries.
Yeah.
We've seen it in other leagues.
Right.
A few big contracts can really cripple a team for years.
So some belt-tightening is in order.
In a way, yeah.
But how do you balance that with staying competitive?
Right.
Good players are expensive.
That's the tricky part, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's about finding that sweet spot, that balance.
Yeah.
It might mean focusing on developing young players, being smarter with scouting, finding those hidden gems,
Right.
being really strategic about recruitment.
Yeah.
It's about building a team, not just buying stars.
Smart investment over flashy spending.
Exactly.
I like it. Okay, what about fan engagement?
All right.
How can clubs get more people in the stands?
Yeah, and really invested in the future of the sport.
Yeah.
Well, this is where it gets interesting.
Okay.
It's about creating a more immersive, engaging experience for those fans. It's not just about watching the match. It's about building a community.
Okay, paint me a picture. What does that look like?
Imagine interactive fan zones.
Okay.
Behind-the-scenes access, chances to meet players,
Yeah.
family-friendly events, so many possibilities.
Right.
It's about making people feel like they're part of something,
Yeah.
not just watching from the sidelines.
That sense of belonging, shared passion.
Exactly.
Okay, and the innovation piece,
Yeah.
what role does that play?
Innovation is about thinking differently
Yeah.
when it comes to making money and connecting with fans.
Wow.
It's about using technology, finding new partnerships, and being brave enough to try new things.
Give you some examples. What kind of innovation?
Well, think about esports.
Right.
The potential of VR, personalized content for fans, even things like fan tokens. There are so many exciting things to explore. It's about using tech to create new revenue and reach new people.
So, to sum it up, it seems like the way forward for Premiership Rugby is a mix of financial smarts,
Right.
building community,
Yeah.
and some forward-thinking strategies.
Absolutely.
It sounds like a lot, but it also feels like a chance for the sport to reinvent itself and come back stronger.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
This is a chance for Premiership Rugby to be a leader in sports innovation. If they can solve these problems, they could create a model for others to follow.
And that brings us to our final thought for you today.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about the business side,
Yeah.
the money, the problems, the solutions.
Right.
But let's not forget what's at the heart of it all.
Absolutely.
Love of the game.
The passion.
As fans, you have a role to play too.
Yeah.
Your support, whether it's going to matches,
Right.
buying merch, or just spreading the word, you can make a real difference.
It really can.
So think about how you can show your love for rugby and help it thrive.
The passion of the fans is what fuels the sport. That's what will determine its success.
And that's a wrap on another deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this journey into Premiership Rugby.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time,